Hi, Jan Hutchins here with the men's school coaches. We're going to be talking about a couple of things I think that will really matter in our everyday life, as well as the work we have to do inside ourselves and how it manifests in the world. The word is projection. It's a big deal in the Mankind Project. It's a big deal, I believe, for anybody to have a sane life. So let's start talking about it. Snake, you wanted to talk about this. Lead us off.
Yeah, I was thinking about the deep divisions in our culture overall and thinking about how difficult it is for me to project the way I did when I was a younger man on the other, on Trump, on whoever I disagree with one way or another. There's an oft used phrase that I didn't care much for when I first came into the work, but has proven to be some real wisdom, and that's you spot it, you got it. And we've all heard that a million times. And it does give a moment for me to reflect on what part of me am I seeing in the other. And so when we speak projection, what we're talking about is our willingness to project our emotional baggage, our feelings, our opinions on another. And it oftentimes extends to projecting our great attributes onto someone else, or project our grief onto someone else. There's a whole host of different emotions as men. Unless we're aware of them, it's much more convenient to project it on another rather than digest it ourselves. So that's where I'm coming from.
Mm.
You know,
One of
the
the things I think is important about that is if I just see someone's behavior and say that doesn't fit my boundary, or I don't think that's okay, that's one thing. But when I have an emotion about it is when I can almost always source something about me that's involved that I don't want to look at. I'm the killer. I'm the bad person. I'm the one without good morals, if I really look at it.
the implications of this concept are really profound. Um, the spiritual teachers, not the least of which is Carl Jung, they said, the world is a mirror. Some psychology people say, there is nothing but projection. We're always looking at a mirror. How open are we to see our reflections in all of the judgments, large and small, that we have about people? Trump is a perfect example right now. I mean, he's just such a huge set of fucked upness that everybody can project all of their horror onto him. But to be able to see my manipulating part and my narcissistic part and my evasive part and my selfish, greedy part, to be able to take a look in the mirror and begin to see that he is just a mirror for me is really profound. And it's said that when I react with some kind of negative emotion, it makes more clear what that piece that is being reflected for me, how much that's in my shadow. It is a marvelous concept to really take a look at our shadows and disowned parts and really create deeper and deeper integration when we can have the courage to say, that's me. It's profound.
And sometimes other people are just assholes. And so the examination doesn't always bear out, but it's worth consideration. What got me started thinking about this is the shootings in Vegas.
Mm.
And my wife and I were talking this morning, and she said, how could someone even do that? And you think about the rationale or the illness, or however you want to label it, the ability to break out a window and shoot 500 plus people, one has to be projecting on these people to harden yourself to a degree to take that many lives. I have no idea what the projection was, but that figures into it too. How can someone do something like that? They have made an ironclad case against the other.
Yeah, it's resentment gone crazy. It's the world has not been fair to me and it must be their fault. And that's a pretty quick place to go in a world that is pretty difficult and challenging. And it requires as much inspiration as we can handle and as much more loving childhood raising and a lot less fear in our everyday lives. I'm always surprised, actually, that people don't do more of this kind of thing, that people don't break and shatter and go crazy more often, because indeed they are under such pressure.
Well, in projection, I think, we talk about in our work the you statements versus I statements, putting it on the other. You did this, you did that. And projection is the ultimate you statement, right? In the same way as this crazy shooter guy, it's the ultimate projection you statement is to hurt other people out of my pain, to lash out in that way. I mean, he ended up committing suicide. Why did he do that first, right? Why is there this massive projection of violence outward? And so with the you statement comes this ownership. Well, what am I really doing right now? What am I accountable for? What's my responsibility? And a big piece of that is saying, well, my thoughts may be accurate. They may not be accurate. In fact, I've got to be really skeptical of them. And that's the kind of rigor I want people to bring to their projections. Say, I may see you this way, but just because I see you that way doesn't mean that that's true. Doesn't mean that it's accurate. Doesn't mean that it has, that there's action there that I need to take. It's always an opportunity to look back at me. What do I own in this?
I don't know if you men are familiar with that Thich Nhat Hanh poem, I Am That, where he talks about the pirates on the boats that are slaying everybody and how, that's a part of him. And I'd heard You Spot It, You Got It for years before I got to my Warrior Weekend, but it wasn't really until I read that poem that I got the saying, there, but for the grace of God go I.
Yes.
And it's that piece that really, for me, dissolves the separation between I and thou, gives me a lot more compassion and creates a degree of consciousness where I'm just less likely to project so much of my own disowned parts of myself. It really got clear for me on my Warrior Weekend when we were talking about how, for example, if I grow up in a family where I hear constantly, I got to share with my brothers and sisters, or I'm going to be selfish, that I'm going to grow up thinking that everybody else is selfish that's doing anything that I'm not doing, which has to do with self-sacrifice. And I don't know how much of that's about willingness, like you were referring to, Snake, as much as it is just how unconscious am I about my own capacity to do the things that I am most reactive to in others. If I can really put myself in somebody else's shoes, I'm sure I can find a way to justify it, which does not make it right. But it certainly allows me to respond more skillfully and from much less, clouded reactivity and emotional baggage.
One of the blessings for me is to do the work, have done work inside the prison and to sit in a circle with men who, had I been asked to judge them before we started, I would have easily said, that man belongs behind bars. And then after knowing them for a weekend going, that truly could have been me. That truly is me sitting over there with a different break. So it changes my attitude, and the men's work has been marvelous in the same way. All of us have been in situations where we truly would have punched the dude otherwise, but find ourselves sitting, dealing with what's going on in ourselves, and then winding up seeing that it was a misunderstanding and something about my mama or daddy that was really being projected on that fellow. And I would have done damage to that person and our relationship had I not found a place where men hold one another accountable and ask us to do the hard work in here before we start to deal with out there.
You know, and it's in intimate relationships, intimate interpersonal, even marital relationships, where this idea of projection really gets close to the bone. And you know, I'm a heterosexual. My wife and I have been together 30 years, and invariably, and this is a generalization, it's not a rule, and it's not the only way projections show up. Invariably, a man will project his mother and his unmet mother needs onto his female partner, and she will do the same thing with her father. Not that I don't project my father onto my woman or she, her mother, onto me. It isn't always heterosexually cross-gender, but invariably it is in heterosexual relationships. But to be able to see how much expectation, how much unmet needs I project onto my wife and believe inside that I'm entitled to get those needs met from her. And it's a rude awakening to realize, well, you know, she's not in this world to meet my needs and expectations. It's always going to be a negotiation. But to be able to see my mother projections and her father projections for us has been a lifetime worth of work in our marriage. And the degree that we've recognized those things and tried to unhook each other's expectations and projections from the other, that has created a greater freedom, a greater dance between our we-ness and our I-ness. Just the recognition of those projections has been terrifically illuminating.
I think there's another component here to projection too. And as an example, I'll use 9/11 and how we've been fed pretty much a steady diet of fear and be afraid of the other through the media and the rise of the internet and social media over the last 15, 16 years. So I think there's a cultural component that gives a stamp of approval to popular projections and strengthens them. And so this is not only the personal work that we have to do to examine our own biases, but understand there's a very real and powerful cultural fertilizer that takes place as well and encourages those projections and strengthens them. Jan's example of everything that he had projected on the guys in prison come from that place as well. We're educated to make appropriate projections, but are they appropriate? That's where the consideration really becomes valid.
Yeah, and whenever I dehumanize another person, no matter how justified I feel, I have gone across a line that I recognize is not a line to cross. So this is good, man. And I just want to say something in front of you. There's so many people who have been contacting me about these videos we've been doing, and I want to thank them for doing so and thank you for participating. Hopefully, and it seems as though people are really getting a lot out of it. So this is the Men's School faculty. We're going to go to the teachers' lounge and have some tea. Thanks, man. Blessings. Till next time.